All right. Hey, hey, hey. Thank you all so much for being here. If you are watching this on the replay, my name is Celeste. I am a therapist from the best city in the world, Boston. Anytime I go live with people and I say that and they're not from Boston, they catch a little like they're a little weirded out by it, but it's because they don't realize that it's the best city in the world. And so like I come on and I get to talk to amazing people that are doing things to empower other people by sharing their story. And so that's always been pretty amazing. And then uh once a month, Jeff and I come on and we get to talk about relationships. And I'm gonna have Jeff come to the stage so he can introduce himself to you all.
What's
Hi,
up,
Jeff.
folks? Hey, good to see you, Celeste. You want me to introduce myself while you drink water?
Yeah, that would be nice.
All right. I'm Jeff Rogers. I'm an executive coach, trainer, facilitator. Basically, what I do is help people to change themselves, whether it's a light touch up or a total gut rehab. We're trying to get you to be your idealized self. And so that's what I do. And we're on here today to talk about relationships with Celeste, the therapist, who's from, I guess now you always say Boston is the greatest.
Wait, you're not from Boston?
I am, but
So
even I don't pretend it's the greatest city in the world. It's
well,
a
we're in it. We're in it. So,
well,
right? Like,
no. It certainly has the best duo doing a therapy podcast
ah.
about relationships. I want to dig into these people's lives, man. Let's do it.
Wait, I got it. So, first, I want to say, like, I just came in from my garden. My hands are a little dirty. I pulled up some potatoes.
All
So,
right.
I'm like on a high. There's something about being in the garden that makes me get on the high. And then, oh, go ahead. You want to say something about that?
No, that's good. You like, some people like playing in the dirt, and some people, what gets me high is not necessarily that, but yeah. And you're gonna spend 19 hours watering, and then you're gonna get 2 potatoes.
Oh, I got like 10 potatoes. Don't do that to
10.
me. Don't
Okay,
do that
10.
to me.
Not 10's pretty good. 10. Are they little? Is it
So
like
there's
big,
some
big
little
potatoes?
big one. Yeah. It's so cool. Like I'm just so psyched out by it. So it literally just happened. I rushed in here, and so like if I seem a little like, sweaty and dirty, it's dirt. It's not. I mean, it's dirt. I mean, but it's grass. It's
It's
garden
soil.
dirt.
It's
It's
soil.
it's a little different than dirt,
Right.
right?
There's actually something called the IKEA effect, and the IKEA effect is the idea that a person values a possession more when they built it or put it together or grew it. So, for
Mm,
example, a dresser will mean more to you if you got it from IKEA and then you're the one that constructed it, versus
true.
if you just bought it from Jordan's Furniture. So, in the same way, you'll never be tasting a potato harder than it's a potato that
I know.
y'all taste that
Wait.
potassium? I think
So
this one has
listen.
a lot of potassium.
So I say I'm gonna make some French fries tomorrow in the air fryer, and if it burns, I'm still eating it because I
Right.
made it.
Right, exactly. Even though you can buy 5 pounds of potatoes for $6, but no, I'm gonna grow them instead over months, and I'm gonna savor that delicious potato flavor. Well, congratulations.
And thank you. I'm gonna get the questions up. But and then I just wanted to tell one more quick funny story because I've been going to get my eyebrows arched a lot. And then lately the lady's like, "Oh, you want to do lip?" And I and I was like, I know I got a little mustache, but is it that bad? And then like the last time I went, she was like, yo, I don't usually like, but she was like, yo, you need to get it done. So I got my lips done for the first time and I feel amazing.
Well, congratulations. This whole time we thought it was potato dirt, but now we know it actually was lip hair. I'm glad you got it. Listen, there's nothing wrong. There's a lot of pressure on people to be perfect,
No,
but we love you. You get your lip done. If it makes you feel good, that's fine.
it hurt too.
It
All
looks
right.
like it hurts.
All right. So for people listening, I'm going to read the question. So these are questions that people write in anonymously. I don't know who they are. Sometimes there's not a lot of context, and so we kind of look at it and get an idea on we just try to figure out based off of what information we have. So I'm gonna read it, and Jeff has never seen these questions. I see the questions, so I'm gonna let him go after I read it. So it says, teen is struggling with drugs, smoking marijuana. I was just talking about getting high. I'll tell him to get a garden. How can parent approve attachment problem so he is strong enough to refuse it?
Mm,
Okay.
yeah. So this is written. It's interesting. This is written. This person must have been in a rush because this is written almost. Uh, how can parent improve attachment problem? Over. So he can refuse it. Over. Like it's written. It's written like somebody was communicating from a submarine. But
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of embedded assumptions in this, Celeste. Do you notice that? So teen is struggling with drugs and smoking marijuana. Okay. How can the parent improve attachment problem? So we assume that there's an attachment problem, and we assume that that is the root of smoking marijuana, so that he is strong enough to refuse it, which we assume that he currently wants to refuse it, but simply isn't strong enough.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see those three assumptions there?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
there's an attachment problem, that it is the cause of smoking marijuana, and that the teen wants to refuse it, but simply isn't strong enough.
Mm-hmm.
I usually I will simply go off people's assumptions. Like, my man is cheating. What should I do? Let's just assume that he is.
Okay.
In this case, these assumptions are pretty big. And when you see teens smoking marijuana, that's not so uncommon that someone has to have like an attachment problem or an attachment disorder in order for them to smoke weed. Do you know what I mean,
Right.
Celeste? It's not as
Right.
though like, oh, your kid smokes weed, he must have an attachment problem. That's not true. That could be true. But I just want to make it clear that when I read this, it assumes this sounds like the kid has a. This is written as though the kid has an attachment disorder, and they're not able to refuse the peer pressure from evil other kids.
Mm-hmm.
But many people who are listening to this have probably smoked weed. And is it always over like peer pressure? In other words, they strongly want to say no because they hate weed, but the
Mm-hmm.
peers are just making them. Is that your experience, Celeste? That's everyone's position?
No, no, no. It wasn't my position.
Right. Oh, you smoked weed before,
Yeah,
Celeste?
I remember the first. Well, yeah, I remember the first time when I was 14. It was a choice. It wasn't. I didn't feel peer pressure, but I'm about to be 40. That I don't know what's happening in these streets now.
Right. Oh, there's such thing as peer pressure.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying we're gonna be. Let's be honest for a minute, okay? Because sometimes now I don't believe it or not, folks. I don't smoke weed. I don't even really drink. Okay.
I believe you.
Not because it's not for religious reasons or nothing like that. It just doesn't do much for me. I'm just not into
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
But that's why I know a lot of people are.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
things that people get out of alcohol or weed, as two common examples, they're not made up. Getting high, a lot of people enjoy it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that the teen is being straight up pressured and otherwise wouldn't do it, but they succumb to pressure. That's not necessarily true. They could just say, I enjoy this, which is not my endorsement that they should be smoking. Just
Right.
that if you think the problem is, how do I get them to refuse their evil friends? When
Mhm.
in fact, that's just what they say to you.
Right.
But in reality, they say, I do this alone because it's fun to me. That's a different thing,
Yeah.
right? And so there's really not a lot of context here, but what do you think is meant by, in this case, attachment problem, Celeste? What do you think is meant?
There's the assumption that, like you said, there's this assumption that the teen needs the weed to get through the day. And one thing that in Massachusetts, well, I don't know what state. Well, in a lot of states in the country, marijuana is becoming legal, but
But
not
not
for
for teenagers.
teens. Yeah, not for teens. Is he six? I don't know. I keep saying he. I'm sorry. That is so stigmatizing. Is this teen closer to 18? Or 12, 13?
Right.
But yeah, I think with the attachment thing, it's assumption, or they may the parent or whoever may smell it on them all the time, and I'm not sure if one of the things when I read this question, I was wondering if this person talked to the teen and just heard from their perspective about why they're smoking or what's going on. If there's that type of relationship, did that come up for you when you read it?
Yes, I this is written in a way that makes me think that they have talked about it
Okay.
because it presupposes the rationale for why the teen's doing it, and the rationale is that uh, my friends are tacitly making me. That's what's
Mm-hmm.
strong enough to refuse it. Embedded in that is that I was with friends. They said, "Come on, you're not cool if you don't do it." And you said, "But I want to be a good kid like my mom likes." And they say, "No, forget your mom. Smoke this weed." And they said, "Okay."
Mm-hmm.
It's written. I know that's an exaggeration,
Right, right, right.
but it's written as though that might have been the story given. But because weed is not uncommon, oftentimes people don't need to be sold on it like that, as opposed to, let's say, a heroin needle, which
Right.
is like a huge leap.
Yeah.
Very few people, their first experience with drugs is heroin injected in their veins, because that's like a big, scary thing. Whereas smoking weed oftentimes doesn't feel to young people scary like that.
Right.
All this is to say, I don't think teens should be smoking weed. I
Mm-mm.
think that adults who can make rational decisions should smoke weed as much as they like until it interferes with their life, right? That's what an addiction is, right? Something that it's a short term solution, it causes long term problems, and you can't stop, right? That's what an addiction is.
Yeah.
So I think weed's fine for adults in moderation, that they're not using it as a short term fix to long term problems. All that being said, when I read this, what I think is needed, when I see this phrase, how can parent improve attachment problem? The best way that I can interpret that is that they're saying that the kid is so attached to their friends that they'll do whatever the friends want them to do. So, in other words, if the kid was only more independent of the friends, then they wouldn't smoke weed. They'd be strong enough to refuse it. That's what I'm getting out of it. That's the
Mm-hmm.
best I can extract.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would say in that case is what you'd be talking about then is like a confidence problem, right? That the young child, now being a teenager, that's a very insecure time for 99%.
Especially during this pandemic where a couple of years there was no social activity, kids was in the home online, didn't, especially depending on the year this child is, lost some social time, right?
Agreed. And so here's like a common path out of weed being, you know how weed can be some people's identity, like Cheech and Chong, famously,
Right.
that's their identity. But weed was kind of like Redman and Redman's identity.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and I know they're rappers, but you get the idea. Redman
Mm-hmm.
or Cypress Hill, they're the weed people, right? Like everywhere they go, someone's, oh, I can't believe I smoke. Or Snoop. Snoop is probably the
Right.
definition of that, right? And you need an identity to be something. It's not just going to be nothing. And so here's something that could happen. The kid's struggling with confidence somewhat. Let's assume that this assumption is true. And the kid's struggling with something. But now they get on the basketball team and they become basketball teen instead of weed teen. And as they play basketball, it's like, oh, well, you want to be good at basketball. Well, you know what? Weed lowers your lung capacity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So ideally, the greatest athletes aren't constantly smoking weed,
Mm-hmm.
because it inhibits you, and you got to be sharp, and you got to have reflexes, so forth, so on. In other words, you're replacing it with something. You're not scaring them with fake stuff. Weed will turn you into a zombie if you smoke it once. It's just not true,
Right.
right? But what is true is that it, to some degree, holds you back from making the kind of progress you could make.
Yeah.
You're trying to get really good at something,
Mm-hmm.
and you could get in trouble and get on probation or go to juvie or whatever it is, because there's nowhere where it's legal for 18 17 16 year olds to smoke weed, nowhere in the United States. So for these, basically what I'm saying is, instead of saying stay away from weed, you can work with the kid to say go towards running track, go towards this other thing, and then weed takes a smaller part of their life, and hopefully smaller to nothing. But if you be fake about it and do the old reefer madness, right? Weed might as well be crack cocaine, and if you smoke it once, all your teeth will fall out and you'll become. But it's not people. Teenagers know that's not true and they won't fall for it.
And
They'll
it's
just lose credibility.
legal. It's legal in a lot of states, so they're gonna be like, if that's the case, well, how is it legal?
Right. So, let you remember you heard of that the study? I think it's called Rat City, or something. And what the study was, they took rats and they gave them the option. They took rats in like a boring, a boring enclosure. It's got
Yeah.
nothing, just food and water, but nothing good. And they gave them options to use heroin, to use opiates. And the rats used and used and used. Right. They would drink the opiate water. It was in the water. They would drink it. Then they built another type of rats, or another group of rats. They built them Rat City, and there was all these things to do, right? And they found that the rats who had Rat City used opiates a lot less, right? Most of them did not get super addicted to opiate water because they were getting their high from something else, Celeste. They were growing their own little rat potatoes in their little rat garden, and opiates lost their appeal.
Right.
And so part of addiction usually is that not saying this kid's addicted, but part of addiction is short-term relief from anxiety, depression, boredom, lack of purpose. So if instead you address those things, reliance on substances, mind-altering substances, can oftentimes diminish.
Yeah, I love that. So what I'm hearing Jeff say is kind of like finding out what this teen is good at. Because I know, and I'm a parent too, and I know sometimes as parents, we could be so concerned for our child that we may like find ourselves barking on something. Sometimes my son, he'll be like, "Hey, mom, chill out," because I'm all about emotional health. So if he's like chilling, I'll be like, "Are you good? Are you like?" And he's like his dad. He's just chilling, like he's just quiet. And I have he like, "Mom," I say if I'm ever like doing too much, just be like, "Mom, chill out." He's like, "Mom, chill out. I'm good." Right. And sometimes we could be like, "What do you want to say?"
You're like, are you depressed? Are you wondering that you're not good enough? Do you have imposter syndrome? No, I'm actually just chilling. Like nothing's wrong with
Like
me.
nothing's
You're
wrong.
looking for all the high level psychological stuff,
Hey,
but
I'm
it's not.
traumatized. You know what I do for a living, so I'm all like trying to
Right.
check in with my babies.
No, I get it.
And
No, it comes from
and I could be OD sometimes, right? And I think overdoing it sometimes. And I think that when we're concerned about our kids, if we keep going in that direction, like weed is bad, blah blah blah, they might end up tuning us out, right? It's not about not saying it, but trying to find a way to communicate, maybe figuring out what they like, encouraging them to do that. Because like I just started off talking about my garden, and it's something new I just started this year that brings me a lot of joy. I never thought. I seen people do this all the time. I never realized like why they was so happy.
right. No, and the last thing is, it can't. Sometimes I've seen parents do this a lot. They go, "Your new hobby is chemistry because
Right,
you're
right,
going to
right.
be a chemist." It
Right.
can't be what you pick.
Yeah.
It has to be what already works for the kid. You don't get to select and say, you're going to get into golf because golfers make a lot of money. If they don't like golf, it won't work. It has to be the thing that they like.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's good. I hope that was helpful. My heart goes out to like parents, especially during this time of um of so many changes that's going on. I only work with adults, and adults are struggling really bad. So I always think about, dang, like what about the kids, and so sometimes, but it's good that you're thinking about your child in this way, and wanting to do more to support them, and so hopefully that's helpful. um okay, so this next one is, I don't really know how to answer this, but I'm gonna read it out loud. How to not be lonely in a bad marriage. Marriage is bad, but leaving will be more complicated than staying. I was
Mm.
like, so I put out an email yesterday, and the questions came in last night, and I was like, "Yo, babe, would you want Celeste the Therapist podcast?" We was dying.
Signed, Jonathan. Who put his name at the bottom? That's funny. Well, this is an interesting question, and
It's
one that,
so interesting. Like, go ahead. I would love to hear
so
your take.
the marriage is diagnosed bad, right? So it's bad, and the person is lonely. So it's saying the marriage is bad, but leaving will be more complicated than staying. Right. So they've run the cost benefit analysis and say, I'd rather have a permanently bad life where I'm just trying to be a little less lonely, because leaving, well, that's complicated, right? That cost benefit analysis, to me, while let me say, many people do that.
Yeah.
That's not something that this letter writer invented. But while many people do that, how often do you meet a divorced person who says, I should have never got divorced?
No, they have divorce parties.
Right. Generally, I'll tell you something about take it away from marriage. The Some people may not know this, but uh, uh, Jeff, aka the professor, the guy in front of you today, Celeste, did you know I dropped out of high school?
No.
I dropped out of high school. Can you
You're
believe
so
that?
smart.
Well, I dropped out. And so my younger brother, he's 2 years younger than me. And I was working full time. I was working retail full time. And my younger brother was going to school, but he wasn't liking it. He was doing, he got some pretty good grades, but he really, it was grinding his teeth. He hated it. And he said, Jeff, you've done both. How do you feel about school? And how do you feel about work? Like, which is better? And I looked at him and I said, and this is profound for a dude who wasn't doing enough self-reflection at the time. I said, every day you finish school, you get a little closer to your goal. And every day I finish work, I get a little further from mine. So let's bring this back to the question. How not to be lonely in a bad marriage. Every day that you stay in a bad marriage, you get a little further from happiness. You're a little older, a little more miserable. Nothing good's happening, and nothing's on the horizon. The minute, if we just take for granted this marriage is unsalvageable, you don't want to be married to them under no circumstances, do you? It can't be saved. You're not just writing this in a moment of malaise, but you feel this way. If we take that for granted, the minute you start doing that complicated work of leaving, no matter how complicated it is, every day you do the work, you get closer to the better, happier you. So those are your choices. Get further from the better, happier you, or get closer. How to be happy while getting further, how to be less lonely while you're getting further from having a meaningful relationship with anyone else. I don't know. Celeste, do you know how you can be less lonely in a bad marriage that's only getting worse?
No. I do. I have a rebuttal, or I have a question. Uh, so they say how not to be lonely. So their issue is they feel lonely,
Sure.
and they've also declared that they're not leaving because it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Just to be clear, they didn't say they're not leaving. They simply said it's more complicated than staying. Go ahead.
Oh, you're right. That's why you. That's why I got you here. So I guess my question to you is that if they were to, let's just say that they've decided, like, the complication, let's say it's financial, whatever. And I know over time you can work on changing that, like rent's high, there's kids involved, we don't know the scenario. But let's just say that's the complication and things are entangled. And things are entangled. She said you can't have both. Yeah, I know Jeff's right. You can't have both. Um, if things are entangled and they want to find happiness while they're trying to figure it out, I think it's important to work on look at themselves and their goals, kind of like what we did with the last writer, thinking about like things that they can do. Because I feel like what happens when we start to pour more into ourselves is that it's hard to accept anything less than the environment that we're in, right? So that could be another angle to look at it under. And I know a lot of times, I'm not sure if this is a man or a woman, but in relationships, sometimes we get so invested in our partner that we lose ourselves in it, which, and everything is about the partner. Tell me what you think about that.
I think everything you're saying is true in that part of being in a bad relationship is that it's debilitating, like to you, because I assume it's bad. So the person doesn't value you, or your conversations with them leave you more drained than nourished. And so like it's almost like uh, 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 it's like constantly being exposed to radioactivity, and it's just
Mhm.
debilitating, and you just,
Mhm.
you know what I mean, you're falling apart. And then you start investing in yourself, and when you get more strength, that complicatedness doesn't look so daunting anymore,
Right,
right?
right.
And so that is another strategy to take, which is to say that you focus on yourself, do a little bit better, and then reassess. Should this person, now that I've lost 10 pounds and started that certificate program, and repicked up my hobby of writing poetry, which always brought me so much joy. Now that I've done those things,
Started gardening.
started gardening again, right? Man, maybe you wrote this. Started gardening. Now that I've done all those things, the idea of squandering all this greatness in a bad marriage is that seems worse than staying. That seems worse
Mhm.
than leaving. And
Mhm.
so I now choose to leave. Which again, like I said, usually the way we have to run this show is we have to take letter writers for granted. So I'm
Mhm.
just gonna meaning that I'm gonna assume that the marriage is unsalvageable. That's not always true, but we're just assuming it because literally the word bad is in this email twice. There's like 20 words and bad is in there twice.
Right. I
Right?
just want
So
to. Oh, go ahead. I just want to make one more point about this
yeah.
after you finish.
No, you go.
Um. So also the bad is in there twice. They're feeling lonely. I also know that sometimes the seed of like a situation happens or things gets piled up and then everything feels bad, but maybe dialogue hasn't been had, or maybe the communication around it hasn't been had, or maybe it's because all you do is take care of your partner. So just kind of like looking at the situation completely and what defines bad for you, for that person, to see if that's something that you can work through as well.
Right. I try. I can think of so many ways in which we could say maybe it's not bad. You know what I mean? I just try not, or maybe it's salvageable. I try not to do that because with the information that we have, I just want to,
Mhm.
let's just, I'm going to go off of what people say. But it is true that you could also work on yourself and work on things and realize, damn, we were in a bad patch. And
Mhm.
this is till death do us part, so forth, so on. But I will note that I do think a decent amount of people stay in relationships that aren't
Oh
good
yeah,
for a long time or forever for the rest of their life
yeah,
because they say, well, I don't like my life, but I don't want to disrupt it. It's a D
yeah,
minus life, but I wouldn't want to mess anything up. You got
yeah,
nothing to mess up. Your life
yeah,
stinks.
yeah.
Shake it up.
And if the complication is kids and stuff, because a lot of times I hear this, and you end up doing the kids a disservice sometimes with staying, especially if things are really that bad between the both of you. Then the children suffer because the energy in the house, they feel that energy in the house. So something
They
to
feel
think
the
about.
energy and something to think about. Your kids know you better than you know them. Okay. And this is why you were a person, you're walking around, then one day you peed on a stick and it said plus, and now you're going to have a kid. But they have never existed a second without you being the only thing that keeps them alive. So they know every intonation of your voice. They know when to ask you for ice cream and when
Yep.
not to show you a bad report card. They know you way better. So the idea that you're going to live with them and live in a loveless marriage where you resent your mate and they're going to be like, what? I thought you guys were a perfect loving family. There's no chance of that. They know. They know that they have some idea. Even if you could trick them, now you've tricked them into thinking that a good marriage is the one you have when you don't think it's good yourself.
Right, 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 right.
So really, you don't do the kids any favors.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
do when you split, you can do it in a way that's not acrimonious. You don't have to try to deny the other person custody and move away to Fiji and all these things. You don't have to do that. But you don't have to you shouldn't stay together with someone and pretend because, well, the kids, I always vowed that I wouldn't get divorced because we're Christian, or I always vowed that we wouldn't get divorced because I want the kids to see what marriage looks like. Well, if they're seeing your marriage, they're already not seeing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so true.
Split it up.
And somebody said that's like saying how do you feel happy with the person who's beating you? That's an oxymoron. You will feel happiness, but not with them. And obviously, like the domestic violence piece is a more tangible thing where people uh, will rationalize leaving quicker than something else that's going on emotionally, or that's just it's just not working anymore. So that's an important thing to note.
Right. It could just be someone doesn't respect you. They don't. They have contempt for you. You get into these situations sometimes where they resent your success or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. Where so in other words, let's say me and Celeste are married, and the better Celeste does, the more I'm like, yeah, you focus on that podcast, but that's all luck anyway. So like every time something at her highest moment, she's doing the garden, and I say, stupid garden. Why don't we just go to Stop and Shop? And every time something good happens for her, I'm like, tuh. Right? It's kind of like in Danny Glover was kind of like that in The Color Purple. Like
Mm-hmm.
he just didn't even want Whoopi Goldberg to have a good life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, all right, well, you can't be. How would I be happy? How do I not be lonely in that situation? You can't.
I do want to say technically you did kind of low key bash my potatoes. You was like they was probably small. So I don't know. Maybe we got a bad
Right?
relationship going
We do.
on.
Unfortunately, we do.
um okay. So I don't know how to pronounce one of these words, so I'm gonna pause so you can pronounce it. I want to leave my marriage, but there are a few things holding me back. I don't want to hurt my husband's feelings. And then the person put in quotation marks. Keep in mind, he isn't really considerate of my feelings. And I am eroed. What is that? How do you pronounce that?
The relationship with his family and I will change. That's just a type. I think it's worried, but yeah, W is next to E on the keyboard, so it's worried.
Oh, okay. I was like, I was like, I should have went to dictionary.com before I came, but let me just
No,
be honest. I don't know how to
okay.
pronounce this.
Either they meant worried, or neither of us have ever heard of that word, but they meant worried.
Okay. And I am worried the relationship with his family and I will change. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. How do I tell him about my feelings? How do I help his family understand my decision?
Hmm. Another one that's pretty fun. So I want to. So we're married. I want to leave, but I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
The
That
parentheses threw me
right.
out. I was like,
And he
whoa.
is. And keep in mind, he don't care about my feelings, but I still don't want to hurt his. That exceeds my ability as a coach. I don't know how to tell someone I promise to love and honor and hold you in sickness and health. I lied. Goodbye. I don't know how to say that in a way that someone goes, my feelings weren't hurt at all. That doesn't
Right.
mean it's the wrong thing to do. That's just the price of a divorce or any type of split is probably some degree of hurt feelings, right?
Yeah.
So if it's just about hurting somebody's feelings, you're probably gonna.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. There's some things there's no way. I prefer another man's company to your company, sir, or I prefer the company of no one at all to your company.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of those make people feel good generally. That doesn't mean it's wrong. I'm just saying, got to be realistic. We're expectation setting here. Then the
That's
second
good.
thing, right? Second thing is I'm worried the relationship with his family and I will change. You can do a lot about that. You can't do everything, but you can do a lot about that, right? So we'll talk about that. And then how do I tell him about my feelings? So Celeste, a tent pole of my coaching practice is called radical candor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Radical candor is the idea that you can be compassionate and direct at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people are direct, but they're not compassionate. They say, Celeste, these potatoes are nasty. You wasted your time. Maybe the potatoes are gross. Maybe I didn't eat them, but maybe they're not good. But damn, why'd you have to say it like that? Even if that's a fact, and each potato tastes disgusting and sour, you don't have to say it like that. Then on the other hand, there's some people. That's someone who can be direct but not compassionate. On the other end, there's somebody who's so compassionate they can't be direct. So they
Mm-hmm.
go, Celeste, these are good. You're so good at this. And then you go, oh, good, I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm going to show all my friends. And meanwhile, I'm setting you up because your potatoes taste like poison. And I'm not giving you any feedback to let you know, hey, man, you got to change something you've done here because potatoes taste bad. Radical candor is being like eating a potato and going, I love how much you love gardening. And I think that gardening is something you should stick with. I think that's gone great. I'm going to be honest and say that these potatoes taste a little unusual to me. Do they not taste a little different than the potatoes that you expect, like the ones at the grocery store? And then you probably go, I mean, I noticed that, but I thought maybe it was in my head. I go, well, no, there's something there. Let's stick with it. Why don't we see maybe there's some different potato seeds or something like that? Do you get what I mean? Where
Yeah.
we're being in a positive direction, but I'm giving you the accurate feedback. So leaving your husband by going, honey, good news, pack your bags. Say, where are we going? I don't know where you're going, but you're getting the fuck out of here. That's not great. That's not the way to introduce divorce. On the other hand, sticking with it because you don't want his cousins to feel differently towards you, that's like choking down the nasty potatoes. What you got to do is say something like, honey, this is hard for me to say because I really don't want to hurt your feelings even now. But I've done a lot of thinking and I've decided I want a divorce. And then you talk it out and you just say, if this is, I'm taking you at your word, you've tried everything, you don't want to stay married. And you say, well, I mean, I'm telling you this, I want it to be amicable. I want us to work out with the kids. I want us to work out with the house. I want to be fair. Okay. But I don't want to be married to you anymore. And then it takes two. We don't have a way to make him be amicable, but that maximizes your chances the most. That conversation's probably not going to go great, but I mean, over the next 6 months. Right. And if you roll like that, his family is likely to follow his lead. Meaning, if you're able to negotiate a kind of like, I care about you. I want you to be successful. Sometimes, just romantically, this just hasn't worked. Right. And then if he can return that same energy, then generally so will his family.
Yeah. When I read this, I said, wow, they're really like, it's rare that you have people that are really embedded in their in-laws the way she is, or this person is. And I thought that was pretty dope. It says that you're a good person. I mean, like, you're likable, right? And they like you and you like them. So obviously the idea of losing family feels hard. And, like Jeff said earlier is, sometimes the things we need to do may feel hard, and that's unfortunately part of the process. Another thing that I look at when I read this is that, the family thing, y'all been together for a while, I'm sure, but also you've spent your marriage looking at your partner's needs and emotions probably more than yours, because for you to put this in parentheses, like you're clear that your feelings are not considered. And so, there's only so much of that your system can take if you're in a relationship and your partner's not catering to your needs. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, that's if everything was going great, she probably wouldn't want a divorce. But
right.
In terms of the partner being considerate or not, I mean, oftentimes in a relationship, somebody's the flower and somebody's the watering pot. You know what I mean? You find that arrangement very often where one person is more considerate of the other, so forth, so on. It's not ideal, but it's not rare at all. And so it's possible that in following with that, he is not an amicable divorce partner. You can't make him. He could be like, oh yeah, well, this is war. And another thing, I always thought you were ugly.
Right.
He can do that. You can't stop him. But you could try to angle towards like, look, tonight, I know this is a lot to hear tonight. And so I don't want to, I want to give you space to talk, but we shouldn't talk. We should talk about this for 20 minutes, but not for 7 hours tonight. Because I think you need time to process. And then let's make a time to talk about it tomorrow also.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And then it's weird. I know, like, you're like, well, that doesn't sound like what most people do. It's not. Most people have knockdown, drag out, bottomless fights where they say things they can't take back. But another thing you could do, you could try to navigate. Once you got to get past him and work through his stuff. But when he's accepted it, then you go, I would like, if we could, to tell your mom. I would like us both to tell your mom together. I would like us both to tell your sister together. The family you're worried about losing,
Mm-hmm.
And you say, you call them up and say, hey, or you go over there. Is really what you should do. You go over and you say, we wanted to talk to you about something. We've decided to split up.
Right.
And like you're helping him through that, he's helping you, and you're both helping the family. And it's setting the tone. Like, we're not trying to have that awful divorce of TV. We're trying to live in the year 3000 where
Right.
people divorce and don't destroy each other in the process.
Right. And I would encourage, if therapy is an option or a trusted like coach, or I don't believe in airing out your business to your friends, but like someone that you can talk to, because my worry for you when this comes out, because you're so embedded in your partner's feelings, like I don't want you to feel gaslit. So maybe writing down the reasons why you want the divorce so you can remember, because sometimes when you're in this like stressful state of having to express how you feel, and I feel like when people decide they're going to get a divorce, they've been thinking about it for a long time, and the other person finds out like last minute, and so it's a shock to them even though you've been thinking about it for a while. So thinking about writing down the reasons why you want a divorce, and also having that paper with you when you're talking, just in case you're struggling with like language, because it sounds like it's new for you to actually put your emotions and feelings first. So have that paper with you, have the dialogue with your partner, and like Jeff said, there's no way to prevent somebody's feelings from being hurt. So just know like that might be part of the process.
I agree. Couldn't have said it better. Very good.
Thank you. Your dog wants you. How? So those are the questions. I feel like there's maybe something that ties everything together. I don't know. Do you see anything that ties everything together?
Uh, we had the kid who smokes weed, the person who wants to not be lonely in a marriage, that's bad, and the person who wants to leave without hurting somebody's feelings. In each case, I think people were made some assumptions or expectations that aren't realistic, right? So, uh, my kid smokes weed because they're peer pressured. How do I
Mm.
save them from peer pressure? Well, you're assuming facts not yet in evidence, right? You shouldn't assume that that's why they smoke weed, because there's other reasons to smoke weed.
Right.
My marriage, uh, uh, it's bad and I'm staying. How do I make the most of it? Well, let's first examine if it's bad, why you're staying.
Right.
The second one, I'm there's a way to get divorced without hurting people's feelings. Tell me what it is. No, there is no way.
There's no way. Yeah.
So in each case, you got to stand really back and set your expectations. Your future doesn't. It's not going to be like you say. What's the path of no pain? Every path has pain, but some paths lead to progress, and some paths just lead to pain.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
You said one time sun and rain, and I remember you said, how could you experience the daylight if you didn't know about the nighttime? And I think about that, and I think about life, and I think about how, especially we are so used to trying to mitigate pain as opposed to like leaning into it or trying to figure out what's going on. And so, unfortunately, when it comes to relationships, we had two marriage questions, probably a parent and a child. It's hard to do this because it's another person. It's not just you. So I get that it's really hard, and I just kind of want to acknowledge that part.
Right. Saying I'll make a move when I figure out a way that costs me nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry, most things cost something. It might
Yeah.
cost you pain, but there's one type of pain, which is having a tough conversation with your future ex-husband. And there's another type of pain, which is 25 years of sleeping next to somebody and wishing they would die and liberate you. Which
Right.
would you pick?
Right. Yeah. And you could be so embedded in the complication or the badness of the relationship that you just stay. You said sitting in your own shit
Yeah.
long enough, you stop smelling it. I remember you said that.
Yep. You stop smelling it and you say, yeah, I'm neck deep in shit, but it's mine and it's warm.
Yeah.
Right? You're just in it and it just feels comfortable. When you got to go swimming at the beach and you to get in that water and have the fun that you came here for. It's the only reason we even went to Aruba. But getting in that water is going to have that momentary discomfort of like, ooh, cold, cold. And then you get in, and then at a
You
certain point,
lit.
you got to get out. At a certain point, you got to get out. And it's going to be that moment, ooh, cold. That's just the price of going to the beach.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. The alternative is just staying in the basement.
Yeah. Yeah. Damn, that's good. I like that a lot. Hey Jerry. This was good. Thank you so much. Tell people how they can reach you for people watching. RogersLead.com. Rogers Leads. Sorry. Yeah. RogersLeads.com is where you could find him. And then tell people about like why they would want to find you and what you do.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the work that I do is with companies, organizations, work with them on executive coaching, including diversity, equity, and inclusion, but just really any type of change work, right? For an individual leader, for a whole team, whatever it is, I come in and help people turn things around or optimize, get even better. So that's basically what I do. It's just almost same thing we do here. We look at where people are trying to get and what obstacles are in the way. And then we find out the obstacle is the way. So we're going to go through and we're going to make progress. And that's what I do. So Jeff at rogersleads.com. If you need
Okay.
me, holla.
I just want to answer this one question because Jerry always comes really quick. So Jerry says, "Why do women stay in marriages that are not going anywhere?" I think that's an assumption that women do that. um, but I do know sometimes because I work with a lot of women, I feel like sometimes uh, we in America we equate relationships to success or to finding love, and so I think that's why you probably see more of it happen. Men do the same thing, but I think it's a esteem issue, because sometimes they're in really like jacked up situations, but I'm on the outside looking in, so as I'm working with people I try to empower them as best as I can, so that they can eventually see what they're in. But I think a lot of it is just our upbringing and our expectation about life, about marriage and things like that, that we don't understand. We're being programmed through TV and culture. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's exactly right. I think getting divorced, many people are embarrassed because remember you had this big expensive party and you wore a dress and you did all this stuff and you told people, this is it. I found them. I know you all haven't, but I have. I found this person that I love so much is going to be great. And I'm doing it in front of everybody. And
Right.
then 5 years later, you realize this is not good.
Yeah.
I don't want to live
Yeah.
like this. But now you have to take it all back. You got to take it
Hmm.
all back and walk away and admit in front of the world, I tied myself to this person and it was a mistake. And
Right.
not only that, they think I was a mistake.
Right.
And they think as much as I don't want to live with them, about 3/4 of the time, they don't want to live with me. And it's embarrassing. And so
Hmm.
people think, can I just, between having to separate out our bank accounts and the mortgage and the kids and all these things and the embarrassment, can I just endure this? Maybe hell's not that bad. Maybe, I mean, it's hot. I'll tell you
Hmm.
what, it's warm in here. It's warm in hell. And they just try to get used to it.
Hmm.
And so it takes at a certain point to really break yourself out of it and go, yo, man, I don't have to live in hell, which
Yeah.
being in a bad marriage is like hell,
Yeah.
right? It's no matter how dope you thought those Jordans were, once you realize they're two sizes too small, you can't appreciate them anymore. You got to take them off.
Right, right, right. And even though it's hell, it's like a hell that you know. And unfortunately,
That's
people
right,
will
Terry.
choose the hell that they know. So that was really good. Thank you for that question, Jerry. For people that are struggling, even if it's not a marriage, if it's your job, if it's your like your situation that you're in, um, you know, use the same advice that we just gave for the marriage people. I think it's helpful.
It's all the same thing. If
It's all the same.
if you've really done the work and it's still a toss up between staying and going, well, guess what? Human beings have something called a status quo bias, meaning people tend to prefer the devil they know to the devil they don't. So if
Hmm.
it really feels like a tie, it's really
Hmm.
not a tie. Really, you should leave because you have
Hmm.
status quo bias. You get it?
Yep, 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 yep. That's good. All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate you.
All right, folks.